All right, thanks a lot. My name is Youngmi Kim, senior lecturer in Korean Studies at the Department of Asian Studies. We will start 윤보선 Memorial Symposium on cultural impact and Hallyu, K-culture. The program will start with introductory remarks by our professor, Vice Principal International at the University of Edinburgh, Professor James Smith. Would you like to start?
Thank you, Youngmi. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're in, everyone. I'm not going to say very much at all. I'm very lucky to be the Vice Principal International at Edinburgh, one of the most international universities in the UK, with very strong connections all around the world. I think with particularly strong and important and fundamental historical connections to Korea in particular, hence the reason we're hosting this memorial symposium. But when I'm not Vice Principal International, I'm a Professor of African Studies. So I believe very much in the possibility and importance of interdisciplinary studies of parts of the world. And I'm really delighted to be able to be here to say a few words about what we're trying to do in partnership with Korea to build study around Korea and build up that program. And I would like to thank Youngmi and her colleagues in particular for working so hard to build up what's still a very young program, but I think a very dynamic program around Korean studies at the University of Edinburgh. And of course, that's about today and about the future and about thinking about Korea's place in the world. And we'll hear a bit about that later in the symposium. But it's also very much, I think, about recognizing the past and recognizing the important role that one of our most illustrious alumni played in shaping Korea's history. So that's probably all I would like to say. I would like to welcome you all to what's unfortunately still pretty much a virtual symposium. We do very much hope next year we will have something in person still. I would like to welcome you virtually to Edinburgh. Thank you for participating. Thank the speakers for making the time to share your thoughts with us from different parts of the world. And I wish you all a very successful symposium. And as I say, hopefully next year in person. That would be wonderful. So that's probably enough for me. I realize I'm not the person you want to hear from necessarily. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Smith. Next, Professor Yong-ho Kim, Director of 윤보선 Democracy Foundation. Professor Kim, are you there?
Good morning to UK people. Good evening to Korean people. It is my great honor to say some introductory remarks on the 9th 윤보선 Memorial Symposium organized by my institute and the University of Edinburgh. On behalf of my institute, first of all, I would like to special thanks to all the participants, including Ambassador Yeocheol Yoon, Ambassador Crooks, Vice Principal James Smith, Professor Youngmi Kim, Professor Haekyung and Professor Doobo Shim, as well as many staffs who prepared for this symposium. This year, we have selected the Hallyu as the main topic of today's symposium. As you know, Hallyu, Korean wave or K-culture is new global cultural phenomena covering almost every part of the world and spreading into a variety of cultural and social sectors, including K-pop, K-drama, K-movies, K-classic music, K-beauty, K-food, and so on. Currently, I personally have some questions related to Hallyu. For example, what is the meaning and significance of Hallyu in Korea and UK. What kinds of social values are Hallyu people pursuing nowadays? And what is the end state of Hallyu in the future? I hope this symposium would provide some clues to these questions, as well as some curiosities related to Hallyu. 10 years ago, we started this symposium in a way to cherish the memory of the former ROK President 윤보선, who studied anthropology at the University of Edinburgh approximately 100 years ago. I personally believe that 윤보선's experience of UK-style liberal democracy during his stay in Edinburgh became the basic foundation of his political belief in South Korea's democratization during the entire life. We also intend to further advance our exchange and cooperation between ROK and the UK in many sectors, including academic field and cultural field, as well as other sectors. In this regard, I am very delighted to see the recent growth and development of Korean Studies program at the University of Edinburgh. At the end of this symposium, we are going to give 윤보선 Young Scholar Award to Sarah Hutton, who wrote excellent MA thesis on the theme of Hallyu and Orientalism. Lastly, I sincerely hope that people, professors, students who are with us online or offline today enjoy this symposium very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kim and Professor Smith. Next, we have congratulatory remarks by two ambassadors. His Excellency, Mr. Colin Crooks, Ambassador of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the Republic of Korea.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, Professor Smith, Professor Kim, other distinguished guests. Good morning, Edinburgh. Good evening, Seoul. I'm Colin Crooks. I've been the British ambassador to the Republic of Korea since February this year, and it's a real honor to be here this evening at this distinguished event in memory of former President 윤보선, a pioneer in so many respects, a pioneer in being one of the very first Koreans, I think, to study anywhere overseas, but certainly in the UK, a pioneer for Korean independence and a pioneer for Korean democracy. And I wonder, we're talking about the K-wave this evening, I sometimes wonder what would former President 윤보선 have made of BTS, Blackpink, Squid Game, Minari, Parasite, and all the rest. We can't be sure about that, but I think it is clear to me, at least, that K-pop, K-drama, the K-wave would not have been possible without the pioneering spirit of people like former President Yoon, the way in which he and others like him worked for the dynamic, independent, creative, and free Republic of Korea that we see here today. And the path that he took to the UK, the journey that he took has been taken by many. And in fact, the K-wave is now taking that same journey. One could say that 윤보선 was also a pioneer of the K-wave, in fact, as one of the very first Koreans to make his way to the UK. He's been followed, of course, by many, many more in recent years. We have, in fact, an exhibition going on at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London right now on the K-Wave. I haven't been able to catch it myself yet, but hope to next time I'm in the UK. And it's a very pleasing phenomenon to see. When I first started to learn Korean 30 years ago, I was thought of as rather eccentric. But now I read that for many young British people, learning Korean is seen as trendy or cool, which is a nice thing for me to. It's about the first time in my life I've been 30 years ahead of a trend. I'm usually some way behind the trends. The arrival of the K-Wave in the UK coincides with a very rich period for UK-Korea relations. We have a lot of momentum. President Moon Jae-in visited the UK twice last year. President Yoon, not Yoon Bo-sun, but President Yoon Song-yeol, we have another President Yoon these days in Korea, concluded a bilateral framework for closer cooperation with the UK, with our then Prime Minister Boris Johnson as recently as June. And of course, we were honoured when President Yoon Song-yeol visited the UK recently for the funeral of Her late Majesty the Queen. And under the bilateral framework, we're addressing many shared problems, shared issues that the people of Korea and the people of the UK need to address together. Things like economic security through our renegotiated FTA, through a supply chains dialogue, through closer cooperation on things like digital trade and maritime policy. Energy security, another very important area for bilateral cooperation, as our people around the world face a difficult winter because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But also opportunities for UK-Korea collaboration on renewable energy and on climate change, close collaboration on science and technology, all of this provided for under our bilateral framework. But at the heart of this bilateral agenda is making sure that our finest and brightest minds on both sides get together. And events like this, exchanges like this evening are, I believe, fundamental to the bilateral relationship, fundamental to the better understanding that we're trying to generate between the UK and Korea. When we put two ideas together, we often find we come up with a third idea which is better than either, and that's the spirit with which we like to approach these exchanges. So I'm very, very pleased that this event is reviving, is thriving as we get past the COVID era, and I hope that next year we'll be able to do this in person. As well. We can at least have some people present here and some people in Edinburgh, but hopefully we'll all be able to get together next year. And in promoting things like this, I mean, I'm often struck, having come to Korea and spent many years in Korea, that the UK and Korea are fundamentally very different. We have different geographies, different histories, different social structures, different cultures, different economic growth models. And yet for all these differences, we managed to coalesce around the same set of shared common values: democracy, the rule of law, market economics, human rights, freedom. Values which inspire us, values which link us, and values where I think our consensus is generated through events like this. So I'm very keen to encourage and support events like this. And these values, I think we're all determined will survive and will prosper despite the many challenges that we face. I believe they are values that inspired former President Yoon Bo-sun, and I also believe these are values whose vibrancy in this country, in the Republic of Korea, would not be possible without the example of people like Yoon Bo-sun. So would like to conclude by wishing you all very good deliberations this evening, this morning, and congratulations, and it's a great pleasure to be here. So thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Ambassador Crooks. Now we have His Excellency Mr. Hutton, Korean ambassador to the UK. As far as I know, he's not in London yet, but he sent us his video file.
Ambassador Colin Crooks of the United Kingdom to the Republic of Korea, Vice Principal James Smith and Professor Young-mi Kim of the University of Edinburgh, Director Young-ho Kim of the Yoon Bo-sun Memorial Association, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to join you for the 2022 Yoon Bo-sun Memorial Symposium. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to all participants who are with us today. and I wish to thank the University of Edinburgh for kindly hosting the event. I also would like to thank the 윤보선 Memorial Association in Korea for their unwavering efforts in promoting the former president's legacy. This symposium has been organized on the memory of the former Korean president 윤보선, who studied anthropology at the University of Edinburgh from 1925 to 1930. During his stay in Edinburgh, 윤보선 learned the political principles of liberal democracy, which then formed the philosophical foundations of his political activities. The valuable experience and knowledge which he attained whilst studying at the University of Edinburgh helped him to pursue the path of Korea's democratization. I'm delighted to see that the main theme of today's symposium is the Hallyu, or the Korean wave. As you are well aware, Hallyu is now a new global cultural phenomenon, reaching almost every corner of the world. It's spreading into various areas of cultural life with K-pop, K-dramas, K-movies, K-beauty, and K-food. Cultural and people-to-people exchanges between our two countries have witnessed a dramatic increase. Koreans love dramas and music from the UK, such as The Crown and Coldplay. K-drama and K-pop, as exemplified by Squid Game and BTS, are also loved by the British people. Last year, Coldplay and BTS collaborated in a music video titled My Universe. It goes beyond merely enjoying one another's culture. Rather, we are collaborating and creating new things together, which can also be universal. So it should be noted that this is the starting point of a new phase of cultural exchanges. Let me briefly touch on the past and current status of Korea-UK relations. The UK is a long-standing friend of Korea. Our diplomatic relations date back to 1883. Since that time, our two countries have developed a close partnership. As you are well aware, British soldiers fought alongside us during the Korean War in the 1950s to defend our freedom, for which we, the Korean people, are still deeply grateful. We have come a long way since then, and in recent years, we have become closer than ever as we share the core values of democracy, market economy, and human rights. The spirit of shared values comprises a significant part of Korea-UK relations, and it is getting to be even more important than ever. Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, in his address at the United Nations General Assembly last month, emphasized freedom and solidarity as answers to the watershed moment when there are threats to freedom and peace in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I just started my job as the Korean ambassador to the United Kingdom Monday this week, and this is my third day as the ambassador. As I prepared myself for the new task, I kept asking myself, as the Korean ambassador to the United Kingdom, how can I further strengthen our relationship? Which areas should I focus on? In this regard, I find this symposium to be very timely and relevant, and I would like to highlight the role of the 윤보선 Memorial Symposium in making a strong, valuable contribution to the sharing of knowledge between scholars and enhancing mutual understanding between our two peoples. It has been broadening its scope with time, from primarily focusing on political issues to expanding to incorporate cultural and social matters. I hope that we will have rich discussions today that will also provide us with valuable insights on the current status and future prospects of Hallyu and how it contributes to strengthening friendship and cooperation between Korea and the United Kingdom in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the kind congratulatory remarks by the two ambassadors. Now we have two speakers on Korea Wave, chaired by Dr. Holly Stephens.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of feedback. Okay, that's much better. It's my pleasure to introduce our main speakers here today. I'll introduce you one by one so that we can focus on each speaker's background, because they're two very distinguished speakers indeed. Our first speaker is Dr. Haekyung, and she is the senior lecturer in ethnomusicology at the University of Liverpool. She completed her musical training at Seoul National University and gained a PhD in anthropology and ethnomusicology from Queen's University, Belfast. Dr. research focuses on contemporary Asian performing arts with an emphasis on the politics of performance, cultural identity, and policy, transnationalism, and cosmopolitanism. She has published widely on various aspects of Korean music and globalization, Korean hip hop, South Asian music in Britain, and Chinese Korean dance drama. Dr. is also the author of a monograph on Korean musical drama, Pansori, The Making of Tradition in Modernity, and several edited volumes on diasporas and interculturalism, and the rediscovery of traditional Korean performing arts. Her current research looks at the ways in which Korean TV music reality programs contribute to the canonization of Korean popular music and the creation of popular music heritage through performance, mediation, and mediatization. And she is also preparing a book entitled Asian Pop Music in Cosmopolitan Europe, K-pop fandom in the Age of Globalization. I should note as well that in addition to her academic research, Dr. is also a Haekyung zither player and a kagok singer, and she is the UK representative for the World Association of Hallyu Studies. So please join me in welcoming Dr. virtually to our symposium. Dr. you're muted.
Yeah. Oh, so okay. I unmute myself, right? Okay, can you hear me? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Holly, if I may. And thank you very much for Dr. Youngmi Kim for inviting me. And it seems like a most kind of a fitting the context, because I just started this research the project from this February in collaboration with Professor Haekyung Lee at King's College, London, about the Hallyu. And I'm wondering if I can share my the slide. Would anyone be give me access to? Hello. Sorry.
Mr. Lee, could you give her access to share file?
Okay, can I now share screen? Share and share.
Can you share now?
Let's see, slide. Okay, I need to. Can you see the
Yes.
Okay, that's great. And I hope my voice doesn't echo. Okay, right. Okay, so as I said very briefly, I'm running a Hallyu network project currently, start for 18 months. But I would like to say something a little bit more about the research context, which is very much about what is really happening in Hallyu globally, and as well as in the UK in terms of its circulation and reception. The Hallyu is an umbrella term that refers to the growth and the popularity of a South Korean popular cultural product that embrace many different forms of a genre, including music, film, drama, games, fashion, food, and that have continuously have been evolving in the past 3 decades. The term Hallyu itself literally means a Korean wave, is accredited to the Chinese media, which coined the term in the 1990s. So very much kind of late 20th century kind of terminology. But circulation of a Korean wave products began with the export of South Korean TV dramas and the K-pop across East Asia. So that decade from the late 1990s to the late 20s. So this is a period which is known as a Korean wave 1.0. Is characterized by a cultural flow within Asia with the Hallyu product exported within Asia. In this context, Hallyu was seen as an East Asian pop culture circulated in the inter-Trans-Asian region and the markets. This is what was happening at the beginning. And the next decade, and from the late 2000s and to the mid 2010, or Korean Wave 2.0, so it's significant shift with the growth of a digital technology, for example, broadband, the smartphone, etc., internet-based social media such as Twitter, Facebook, and the media platforms like YouTube, Netflix, and Spotify, etc. South Korean creative industries have benefited greatly from Western-based social media and the platform which audiences and fans across the globe use daily to consume, exchange, and media contents. This, what is called the spreadability of a media. This is a term what Henry Jenkins coined, empowered its users and fans. The Hallyu in many ways in the digital area since the mid-1910s, Hallyu Korean Wave 2.0 or New Hallyu has become global popular culture. So this is kind of a context. And also the recent the international media headline and the success of the South Korean popular culture also demonstrate its global circulation and the impact. For example, as we all know, Korean K-pop acts such as BTS, Blackpink, and 17 have been topping the global music chart, and the K-pop on the YouTube and Spotify accumulates millions and millions of viewings. Bong Joon-ho's multi-award winning film, Parasite, put South Korean film on the top of the international film circuit, artistically and commercially. K-drama from Squid Game to Extraordinary Attorney Woo on Netflix, also global success. The Hallyu reception in the UK in recent years also reveals a global circulation. For example, an article in Observers in Chowdhury in 2019 first reported the growing popularity of a Korean wave in the UK and explained how it became more visible and appealing to the general public in the country through its success in football. Korean footballers in England like Son Heung-min, and the K-pop, and especially the BTS and the BTS concert in Wembley Stadium, and Blackpink in London and Manchester was a kind of sold out event. And also fine arts in the exhibitions in the major UK gallery, and the food, of course. There are many new Korean restaurants popping up throughout the country. So, and then also you can buy many Korean groceries in the supermarket, and so on and so forth. So, and more specifically, the inclusion of 26 Korean words into Oxford English the dictionary. Dictionary also even more attention to everything Korean in the UK and the worldwide. So it is notable that many of the words included in the dictionary associated to the Korean contemporary culture includes Hallyu, Korean wave, K-drama, K-pop, and manhwa, which means a cartoon. So it become a part of this English word. The moreover, Hallyu Korean Wave exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum opened on the 24th of September also shows how popular culture of South Korea can be exhibited in an art museum in the West. So here, this is a photograph about the Hallyu exhibition at the outside. And some of the participants of the events which I organized last week. And this is when you enter the V&A, the exhibition, Hallyu exhibition, what you face is of course size Gangnam Style. And then they also have the Squid Game costumes, and they brought actual kind of replica of the basement scene in the Parasite. Even they managed to bring the smell. So you can smell the the smell of the Panjiha, the half basement. And then this was one of the exhibitions, and then these inside, this is how it looks, and it's really it takes about a couple of hours to see the whole exhibition there. And okay, so I'm going to talk more about the excuse me, project which I'm running in collaboration with Haekyung Lee. Actually, both of us are called the Haekyung. Haekyung was quite a popular name at the time. So during our event, we acquired kind of a unique name, the Haekyung sisters. So here, the project which I'm running with another Haekyung Lee is called the Globalizing South Korean Creativity, Exhibiting and Archiving Hallyu, the Korean Wave. It's funded by ESRC for the 18 months, starting from the 1st of February, and it goes on until the end of July the next year. And so we also have the two partners, the Center for Hallyu Studies at Seoul National University and the Institute for Information and Archival Science and Hankuk University for Foreign Studies. So two Korean partners, and also Korean Cultural Center at the UK in London is our another partner. So it's a kind of interdisciplinary network, academics and researchers and industry specialists. So currently we have 20 members in total. So its overall aim is to kind of to explore the multifaceted global process of mainstreamization and the institutionalization and the canonization of Korean culture and the creativity. It's many adjacencies. So this is our kind of overall the aim. And then we have the 6 research questions and 3 impact plans. So as you can see, it's quite specific to, I mean, what is really happening now, and how this is kind of how Hallyu is becoming a part of a global economy, and also how it in turn is to become can represent Korean nation and its culture, and even its cultural heritage. And of course, the creative industry is a really role of creative is very important, especially in the UK context. We also would like to see how UK creative industry and the cultural consumers play in this process. And fans are important, and without global kind of consumers, Hallyu may not be existing in the form the way it is. And of course, it's enter the international art world, as you have seen the V&A exhibition. So it's all, and also but in this process, how it is selected and how it's recognized and archived in the different kind of Hallyu aspect is another thing which we are interested in. So I'm not going to go into all the details because it's question themselves are quite broadly defined, so that it could kind of touch upon many different kind of aspects of Hallyu, because Hallyu refers to music and the drama and the film and the cartoon and the food and fashion and so on and so forth. It's a kind of entire the gamut of a scope of the Korean, contemporary Korean popular culture. Now is even expanding its the scope to a classical and the traditional the arts and art form as well. So our research methods and activities are built around the range of activities, including online meetings, the seminars, and the roundtable, and the Q&A sessions and symposia, and so on and so forth. So we had the first event, the opening meeting on Zoom, because the participants, network participants, were from half of us from based in the UK, half in Korea. So the first meeting was, the opening meeting was on Zoom. And then the last week we had event 2 and 3 back to back, public seminar and roundtable in the Savoy Place on the 14th of October, and then workshop at the Korean Cultural Center was held on the 15th at and then we're planning to have a symposium and a workshop in Seoul National University next year, next April. And then at the end of our term in July 2023, we're going to have a concluding meeting date to be. This is a kind of our schedule. How am I doing with the time? Am I doing okay? So I'm okay. So and then in the London events, public seminar was in the morning and the roundtable in the afternoon. So we had a kind of approximately 80 people, and then in the afternoon it was only the network members and the invited guests only, and the workshop the next day. And I have some photographs and what we really did. In the public seminar, we had 4 presentations and 1 special talk. So each one of the members, Haekyung from Seoul National University, talked about globalization and the Hallyu. And then it was commented by Nick Pryor, in fact, who teaches University of Edinburgh. So he came to London to be a commentator of this event. And then a second presentation was given by Keith Negus, who is one of them, a very prominent music industry scholars at Goldsmiths College. He talked about the UK creative industries and consumers in global context, and his talk was commented by So-Young Kim, who is the professor in film studies in Korean National Arts. National University of Arts, and she's also a documentary filmmaker. And then the third presentation was the Korean Wave fans in the UK, given by Colette Abanmain, and then it was commented by Yaran Kim. And then fourth, the presentation was in the institutionalization and industrialization of the Hallyu by Professor Shim Doobo, and commented by John Newbegin, who is the founding CEO of the Creative England. And in fact, Professor Shim is going to give a talk later, so you're going to hear more about his research. He's one of the most distinguished scholars in the Hallyu studies in Korea and worldwide. And then a final talk was a special talk on the Hallyu exhibition at the V&A by Rosalie Kim and Eugene Che, 2 curators from V&A. So we the focus on each research event aligned with the specific research questions, like how you presented the consumers and the mainstream in the global culture. So question 1 and 2 and 3 and 5. So we can try to match with some of the research questions and the topics and themes that were covered, discussed in the public seminar, and also try to have a Korean and the UK participants, and then create a kind of the dialogue And then also we had a discussion with the audience as well. So this is what you're going to see. What you're going to see, I think, is a Keith Negus giving a talk, and this is the audience. And I forgot his name. He's the creative industry expert teaching in the Warwick University, and then he was asking some questions. And here is the two curators, the Eugene Che and the Rosalie Kim, talking about explaining their exhibitions and at the Hallyu exhibition at the BNA. This is the much needed kind of a group photo after we had the public seminar. And then round table in the afternoon, we had the two key papers. And the first one was given by Sarah Cohen, who is also director of Institute of Popular Music. And she talks about how does a popular culture become a heritage, focusing on specifically about the way the British popular music become a British cultural heritage and become a sign, kind of a symbol of a local heritage or also identity and so on and so forth. Of course, it also relates to the tourism and so on and so forth. And Hee-sun Kim, who was also used to serve as the research director of a research department at the Center for Korean Kugak Center. And then she talks about the Hallyu and the Heritage Institution based on building on her own experience as a running research institute on the Korean traditional music. And Holly Rogers, who does research on the multimedia, AV media, and she talks about the Hallyu in Art Museum from multimedia perspective. And Park Joo-hee, who's the scientist, and he talks about she is a digital meteorologist, so on archiver as well. So talk about the Hallyu and the use of a digital technology. And then the archiving Hallyu and emerging questions were addressed by Professor Myung-Hwan No and Dr. Chojin Che, both from Institute of Archiving, from Korean University of Foreign Studies in Seoul. So we try to, during the roundtable, we try to focus on these two specific questions. Of course, they had to be very, very short because time was a very tight. But we managed to create interesting dialogue and the discussion. This is the round table, and this is Sarah Quinn talking about making some comment on our discussion, and this is Hong Seok-kyung, who is the director of the Hallyu Center for Hallyu Studies in Seoul National University. And then day two. In the workshop, we started with an opening talk given by Professor Shim Doobo, and he was very busy during this, and because he was kind of we asked him to talk in both days. He kindly accepted our request, and then it was really good to have him. And so we had that's our second following the open talk by Professor Shim on Hallyu and the cultural policy, Mary Spence, who does research on the Jamaican music as well as the Hallyu. She talked about the Hallyu and the nation branding and soft power. And then the Mark Place, who teaches who's a film scholars from one of the universities in UK. He talks about how Hallyu reshaped the Korean studies. And then Q&A question, and Dr. Jung-Woo Lee, director of the Korean Cultural Center, UK, joined us and then answered the questions. And his involvement with, the center's involvement with Hallyu, the promotion and education, various education programs and the exhibition programs that associated with the Hallyu in the UK specifically. And then the two early career researchers, Dongjun Lee and Im Jung-mok, talked about the Hallyu policy from music business perspective. And then we talked about a little bit about the next year's event. So these are the 1 to 93 different research questions we tried to align with the workshop we held. So just some photographs, and Professor Doobo, Shim and Haekyung Lee leading the workshop. And then this the Kim Mary talking about the soft power. And then this is the director of the KCC answering questions and discussing with Haekyung Lee about the policy. And then this is the place talking about Korean studies in UK. I think I can see Edinburgh here, and they're talking about the different Korean programs, and how you can see how post-Korean wave and the pre and the post-Korean wave, and then there's a considerable expansion of a Korean studies program, and especially when it comes to language. So, and of course, we have some because we just completed our project, the events last week. So Seoul events planning is just about to begin, and the dates and venues are decided. So there's some kind of ideas, some preliminary ideas for the Seoul event. It's a theoretical and methodological questions associated with the Hallyu studies. We also would like to expand to the more study of a creative industry in general, and they're using Korean wave or the Hallyu as a kind of one of the most exciting and the dynamic case study to understand all the complexity of this global development. And then, of course, we have to look into creative industry and policy, institution diplomacy, and the Hallyu archiving, curation, and industry workshops, and so forth. And we learned that also there will be some permanent exhibition in the National Folk Museum in Seoul, in the Hallyu section. So it's a kind of a archive, not only archiving, the curating exhibition, exhibiting Hallyu become a kind of a more and more the practice in many different kind of national institution in South Korea. And the commercial one, we'll have to see. I mean, whether it's going to, there will be something like a new B2 story, or kind of a British music experience, which is a commercial outfit of the British popular music. Whether it will, the Hallyu, the exhibition, or that kind of a curation can find a market for it. We'll have to see. So we and then in the Korean the event, we will look at these kind of following research questions. And then of course this project will end next July. So what is going to be next for a Hallyu network project? And this is a lot to do with the impact plans which we had. So it's how we connect the researcher to industry experts and policymakers across the two countries, not just Korea with the UK. We kind of try to promote industry and the policy, the learning. And then to produce a journal, a special issue, that's one of our outputs. And also, of course, to seek further funding opportunities and long-term collaboration with individual scholars and institutions from the UK and South Korea. So this is something which we have to emerge more clearly after or during and after the Seoul meeting next year. So, and then to recap, our network aim is to explore a multifaceted global process as a mainstreamization and institutionalization and the canonization of the Korean culture and creativity. But I think it's from our point perspective, I think interdisciplinarity is very, very important, because we learned that during these London events, the scholars and both established and the emerging and new young scholars find listening to, hearing the different kind of a perspective, viewpoints were hugely useful and helpful and very productive. So in the collaboration and the academic and the creative industry and the policymakers and consumers is a very, and in this case, a fan themselves, that they're no longer the passive, the consumer, that they're kind of what they call the prosumers. So, and then of course, the global and local context is a very specific, and also an interest, what kind of interest we are talking about. So these are the things which probably will have to look into. I think that's all I can cover for now. And I noticed it, right? We just had 9 months altogether for the 18 months project. So we're kind of entering the second half of our project. Of course, 18 months is not very short, it's not short, but it's not very long either. So I hope this will give us a kind of a solid, the sound of the foundation to develop something more, let's say, something more substantial and longer term to and also involve scholars from both ends of the both from South Korea and the UK and so on and so forth. So thank you very much, and please ask me many questions. Okay, I should stop.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Youngmi, is the plan to have the Q&A separately or all together?
I think you can have a Q&A and then next, up to you.
All together?
You're the boss. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if I'm sure a lot of the audience will have a lot of questions for Dr. But if you could hold on to those for a second. First, we will hear from our second speaker, and then we'll have an open Q&A for everybody. So our second speaker is Professor Doobo Shim, who has also been participating very actively in Dr. Am's research network. So that's a wonderful connection there. Professor Shim is the Professor of Media and Communication at Sungshin Women's University in Korea. He previously served as an assistant professor at the National University of Singapore and was a visiting scholar at Duke University in the United States, where he also received his PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Professor Shim's research examines the media and communication within critical, cultural, and historical perspectives, and he has recently focused on the rise of Korean popular culture in Asia. His publications include several books in both Korean and English, notably an edited volume on pop culture formations across East Asia, and several articles in journals such as Media, Culture and Society, Asian Journal of Women's Studies, and Korea Journal, among others. He has previously served as the president at the Korea Speech, Media and Communication Association and was also research director at both the Korean Institute of Southeast Asian Studies and the Korean Association of Southeast Asian Studies. Professor Shim, thank you for joining us today.
Are you there? Can you hear me? Yes. His Excellency Mr. Crooks and Mr. Yoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to UK and good evening to South Korea. I am extremely honored to have a chance to give a talk at the 윤보선 Memorial Symposium 2022. Since I was a student, I have admired the courage and passion for democracy the late President 윤보선 showed to his fellow countrymen in Korea. I will remember today as one of the most memorable moments in my life. As I'm given 30 minutes for my talk, I think I only can provide a brief outline of the history and trajectory of the Korean wave and some issues and some current issues. And also, please understand my limited English proficiency. Okay. Many people say that the Korean wave started sometime in the late 1990s, but since Korean wave is a fandom phenomenon based on a gradual flow of Korean content to foreign countries, it is not easy to pinpoint when exactly Korean wave started. But from around early 2000s, Western media began to report on the Korean wave. So for example, in 2002, American news agency AP reported that curry kimshik is a pun of the Korean word kimchi. All things Korean, from food and music to eyebrow shaping and shoe styles, are rich across Asia. So although the scale and the scope of the Korean wave is much smaller at that time as compared to today, it was already a very interesting phenomenon for the news media to report. And then, as we all remember, around 2012, Korean rapper and singer Psy became an international hit with his dance song, Gangnam Style. Then, for several years, Korean wave didn't go to the international stage as the Psy has achieved in 2012, but as time go by, boy band BTS, girl group Blackpink, they began to garner all important awards from around the world. And at the early stage of the COVID-19 pandemic, in February 2020, Korean film Parasite won American Oscar for awards. Especially, it was the first international film to win the Best Picture award. Then some weeks ago, another Korean television drama, Squid Game, also won Emmy Awards, which is largely American drama award. So if we take a look back at the trajectory of the Korean wave, based on the popular culture, Korean wave scope have expanded to food, sports, tourism, and even plastic surgery, and all things Korean are being recognized by the foreign people and foreign media. In order to understand the Korean wave phenomenon, we have to understand the global political economy beginning around the 1990s. We remember that 1990s was an era which was characterized as the globalization and also the rise of neoliberalism. After a decade of neoliberal reforms in America and in the UK, especially Hallyu conglomerates began to get bigger and more internationalized. And with the development of new communication technologies, such as satellite television and digital revolution, people at the time worried that the future will be dominated more firmly with the content from the America. So what Asia and the rest of the world had to do, initially Asian countries, including Korea, tried to resort to the thesis of cultural imperialism. So as you see in the pictures, in the late 1980s, in the streets, Korean people and filmmakers go and chanted such as, "Out did American cultural imperialism." But as time go by, Korean audiences were kind of fed and tired of the low quality of Korean cinema, and then they asked Korean cinema to boost their quality of the cinematic expression. And also the Korean media began to say that if there were no more means to protect the movie market, we would have no choice but to compete with Hollywood movies by enhancing the entertainment quality of the Korean movies. That was the beginning of the preparation of the future Korean wave. And also we have to understand that since around late 1980s, Korea has changed itself socially and politically and economically, especially after almost 3 decades of military rule. Korea began to democratize, and as a democratization package, Korea has also liberalized the media industries. more television stations were set up. And then as time go by, with the discourses of cultural age or information age, and the future will be the age of the culture or something like that, fresh talent from prestigious universities, so-called SKY or Seoul National University or Korea University or Yonsei University, they began to choose media industry for their career path. And also with the lifting of restriction of foreign travel beginning in 1988, more and more Korean students went overseas for their education. And then in the 1990s, foreign educated artists came back to Korea, and then they became the mainstay of new age of Korean media reform. And then also the general public began to have more respect for artists and the cultural elites who are in the media industries. And as time goes by, Korean companies, such as large companies like Samsung or Hyundai or Daewoo or LG, they also invested in the media industry. So overall, the budgets in the media market began to rise. And as time goes by, as a result of all those aspects and the factors, the production values began to rise. Okay. Also, the audiences, after many years of savings and many years of economic development, they begin to have more disposable income. And they, once they have leisure time and then money to spend, they begin to ask for new and more sophisticated cultural taste. And also the government in the 1990s had a different stance against culture. For quite a long time, the government saw the culture as an avenue of the propaganda. But in the 1990s, the government began to see that culture is important content for economic development. So they also reformed the media policies and media laws and eased the censorship, and also they began to provide more developed media infrastructures. So for example, in 1995, South Korean government provided new information infrastructure. So from the early 2000s, Korea has become the most fastest internet compared to most of the countries. And all those infrastructure became the factor for the Korean wave. Another thing we have to remember is that in the early 1990s, the general Korean public began to be awakened to the importance of culture. Culture not only as an industry, but culture as a source for tradition preservation, and also culture as a value. For example, in 1993, you see the picture of the Korean movie Seopyeonje. Seopyeonje is a movie which portrayed the traditional Korean musical form, pansori, and the three family members who are itinerant, but they lost the popularity from the audiences. But this story, interestingly, captured the mind of the Korean moviegoers in 1993. So after many years, it became the first Korean movie which recorded more than 1 million audiences in the movie theaters across Seoul. So this became a huge news. So and based on this clue, Korean media industries also began to see that if this kind of movie can do achieve some milestone. Why can we? By enjoying the digital revolution and based on other more advanced media infrastructure, we can do that. We can compete with Hollywood. And also about the same time, American movie called Jurassic Park was huge hit around the world, and the Korean media reported that the whole revenue of the Jurassic Park, this whole sales record is about the same with 1.5 million Hyundai cars. At the time, Hyundai car was a pride of all Koreans. And think about that. In order to produce 1.5 million Hyundai cars, how much labor is needed? But only one movie, although making a movie requires a lot of labor, only one movie can get sales revenue almost same with 1.5 million Hyundai cars. So Koreans began to talk about this, and then the value of the media industry was being recognized throughout and every corner of the Korean society. So the government also began to support the media industry. So by revising the film law and media law, they provided tax benefit to the film production, and also they eased censorship so that artists can show their and also artists can express their content and their ideas more freely. And all these, against all these reforms, the business technique was also introduced to the film industry. So every stage of filmmaking became more systematic, and also the famous Korean film directors of today, such as Bong Joon-ho of The Parasite and Park Chan-wook of the famous movie director who won all kinds of awards from Cannes and other prestigious film festivals, or Kim Gi-do, who is famous for his art movies, especially also Hong Sang-soo. They all debuted in the 1990s. And also another thing for the Korean companies to realize the importance of the film industry and the media content was happened in America. In 1995, a newly formed movie studio was launched. It is DreamWorks SKG. SKG stands for Steven Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen, who are at the time considered as the guru or the genius of animation, music, and film. They formed together a new movie studio, and then they wanted to garner the funding from around the world. And initially, Samsung approached, but after a long talk with the Samsung chairman, Steven Spielberg declined Samsung's offer because he thought Samsung's company culture is very strict, and then he thought Samsung may not be a good friend of their more free spirited Hollywood-style company. And then Jail Jedang's Mickey Lee approached Steven Spielberg, and they successfully reached a deal that Jail Jedang, a small company at the time in Korea, began to be an important investor of this movie studio. Afterwards, Jail Jedang wholeheartedly invested in movie studios. And then maybe many Korean fans may remember or may heard of the word CJ. CJ is expanded and also more organized form of 제일제당, and CJ is behind Parasite movie, the movie Parasite's distribution. So the 제일제당's investment in American Hollywood movie studio was important milestone for the future development of the Korean movie and other media industries. And at the time, it was possible because Korean society was being prepared for the future discourses such as information age, or 21st century will be a century of culture or globalization. So all the Korean society began to talk that we have to be prepared for the future. Otherwise, we'll be the losers in the global economy. And then they began to see when Sony bought out American movie studio, Columbia Pictures, which is now called Sony Pictures. It was a shock, not only to Koreans, but also to the American public in general, because film is kind of a symbol of American soft power, but Japanese company bought out, and it was a good message to Korean companies. So if Japan can do that, why not us? And if the Sony, the television maker, buys out the television content, it is a synergy. So Korean companies like Hyundai Electronics or Samsung Electronics, they also got a clue that we also have to have a film business. So this is the important beginning of the Korean Wave Foundation. So in the 1990s, the Big Five or Big 10 Korean conglomerates like Samsung or Daewoo or Hyundai or LG or SK, all of them invested in the movie and media industry. Although they withdrew around 1997 Asian economic crisis, the talent who were originally with Samsung or Hyundai, they remained in the film industries. So they became the mainstay for the future direction of the Korean media industry development. And interestingly, globalization was not simply applied to the Korean case. Whole of Asia, they, such as Taiwan or Vietnam or China, they also try to prepare for the media globalization. And then they also allowed the new television station set up. And then when those new television stations in Taiwan were short of television content, they looked to the Korean television stations. And then as time go by, television audiences in Taiwan and China began to find the strengths and they began of the Korean content, and they began to enjoy the Korean television dramas like What is Love All About or All About Eve, Autumn in My Heart. This is a poster of Autumn in My Heart or Autumn Tale in Taiwan, and it became a huge hit in Taiwan and Northeast Asia. And then the storyline became a book in Taiwan, and then the OST became also a huge bestseller in Northeast Asia. So why Korean content? Initially, commentators agreed that compared to American content or Japanese content, Korean shows and television dramas provide more conservative, more Confucian values. So there is the audiences in Northeast Asia, including China, they began to find it easy to consume Korean content. And also, as an economically developed society, Korean dramas portrayed the sceneries of developed society within their Korean dramas and films. So audiences in Vietnam and Cambodia or Malaysia, when they watch Korean drama, they begin to see it is easier for them to digest those sceneries compared to Western sceneries, Western storylines. And then gradually the Asian audiences across the Asian continent began to think that if Korea can do, why not us? So Korean Wave provides some kind of clue for the rest of Asia to develop their own local media industries further. And these days, Korean drama and film are also famous for portraying gender equality. So traditionally, women, especially in Asia, women were largely portrayed as submissive, and then they are not very active. But recent Korean dramas portrayed Korean women as almost equal as Korean men. And when I was in Singapore from 2001 to 2006, I consider my observation during my stay in Singapore in the early 20th century as a kind of a case study for the evolution of the Korean Wave. Like Korea or the rest of Asian countries, Singapore was also trying to prepare for the future. And then, as we know, that Singapore is a very small country, only with a 5 million population. And so it is easy for the government to control the ideas and information. But in the 1990s, some kind of globalization committee or the future committee within the Singapore government began to think that in order for lure more foreign talent, Singapore needs to become more liberalized. And one way to attain the goal is to liberalize its media market. So until the 1990s, Singapore only had one broadcasting station and also only one newspaper company. But in 2001, Singapore allowed the newspaper company to launch television station and the existing television station to launch a new newspaper. So when the new television station called Media Works in 2001, their strategy is to take advantage of the Korean Wave. Because Korean dramas were already popular in Taiwan and Hong Kong and China. So why not in Singapore? So they showed more Korean television dramas in the prime time, and then it worked. So this is one story behind the Korean Wave, spread of the Korean Wave in Southeast Asia. And then it was a kind of a win-win relationship between the new television station in Singapore and the Korean media content exporters. And also when we think of Korean Wave, we should not caught up in kind of a Korean nationalism, because before the Korean Wave, Taiwanese television drama called The Meteor Garden, it kind of opened the Korean Wave for the Southeast Asian market. So when I interviewed the Filipino audience somewhere around 2005, she said that before the arrival of the Korean dramas, Taiwanese drama Meteor Garden kind of provided some kind of a Northeast Asian look. So after the consumption of Taiwanese drama, it was easier for them, for the Filipino and Indonesian people, to enjoy another Northeast Asian television drama, which is Korean drama. And as we know that many K-pop boy group and girl bands, they strategically include Southeast Asian members. So those members kind of play a role of bridge between Korean Wave to be more popular in their homeland. So the one thing we have to tackle with is the role of the government. As I said before, Korean, compared to other countries, Korean government, especially in the 1990s and early 2000s, played a certain role for the future development of the Korean Wave, or the increasing popularity and increasing recognition of the Korean content overseas. And these days, in some sense, too many Korean institutions are competitively try to provide ideas and policies and promotions and exhibitions in relation to the Korean Wave. And there are some overlapping roles between these agencies. And what implication does this overlapping institutionalization is that somewhere around 10 years ago, after the rise of the word K-pop, Korean media and the Korean government at all stages began to use K something. So these days, everything is related to K. So about a few months ago, when I had this kind of talk at the library of the Mapo district within Seoul. Mapo district is an administrative district within the metropolitan Seoul city. And then I found the logo of K Mapo. Or if you go to Busan city, you can easily find K Busan or something like that. So this kind of too much nationalistic propaganda-like tactic may estrange foreigners. And also my students say that they are sick and tired of K something. So we have to be reminded, although it is a good thing for Korea to be recognized outside, because for the past several hundred years, Korea was largely unrecognized. Although Koreans were very proud and confident people. And finally, Korean Wave, the thing like Korean Wave or phenomenon Korean Wave began to be kind of a symbol, and it is a stepping stone for the Korean people and nationals to go further abroad. But it is better for the Korean government and media not to take advantage of Korean Wave too much. And also, there are some malpractices within the K-pop industry. Maybe some of the fans may heard of a slave contract between the music production agency and the stars or the trainees. Although slave contract is the problem is getting remedied, and then there is this kind of problem is so in order for the Korean media enjoy the more healthy environment, and it is important some kind of infrastructure for the Korean Wave to continue to develop. And also, because of Hallyu, the many Korean economic institutes began to engineer a kind of research that because of Hallyu, Korea is gaining a lot of money, or Korean economy is getting a certain kind of resources and revenues, but still the national, in terms of yearly national revenue, the cultural industry's portion is less than 1%. So while Korean Wave or Hallyu is good for the whole of the Korean economy, we have to continue to think the value of culture as well. Culture is not just economy, but based on culture, we can culture can be a material for us to rethink our future, rethink our society, rethink our environment, and then it can be another way of education or school. And not only education or school, but the culture's role can be diversified. But these days there is a trend, worrisome trend that Hallyu is only good for economy. So if you look at the recent popular drama, Extraordinary Attorney Woo, Korean drama is trying to provide more and more materials for rethink our society. The heroine of this drama is suffering from a disease, but she is capable of doing a very important legal works, and also it portrays that this attorney is not on a regular employment status. She is also worried about her irregular employment status, and which kind of rings for the many young adults or youth around the world because of the neoliberalism. 20-something or 30-something are always feel they are not very stable in this economic environment. So Korean drama portray this kind of social realities. So it is another point for the Korean television dramas and Korean popular culture to be more popular with the people and audiences around the world. So recently, French scholars Chikeli and October called Korean wave is not simply a soft power, but it is a sweet power, because the concept of soft power always comes with hard power, but Korea has no history of imperialism, or Korea is not a military superpower. But nevertheless, Korea has achieved something as a cultural power. So we would better call Korea as a sweet power. It's an interesting concept. And because of time constraint, I have to go faster. For quite a long time, when Korean wave was largely a Northeast Asian phenomenon, people thought of cultural proximity is an important factor behind the Korean wave phenomenon. But we have to be reminded that each Asian countries are not exactly culturally same or culturally proximate. Rather, we have to be reminded that Japan or China, Korea or Taiwan and Hong Kong or Singapore, they have achieved for the certain economic development for the past several decades, and those democratization and industrialization experiences have become a kind of a basis for cultural proximity. And also what should be reminded is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, Korean drama's popularity began to be widened throughout the world. And one important factor is the platform Netflix. Whenever I travel around or chat with my foreign friends around the world for the past 2 or 3 years, they say that whenever they open their Netflix platform, the first thing they see is the Korean drama, whether it is Brazil or Colombia or Germany or Taiwan. And we have to remind that while Korean wave is getting bigger, it gets bigger based on the platform which is based in America. And also, whenever many people think, whenever many audiences around the world confess that when they watch Korean drama, they feel some kind of intimate difference or strange similarity. Why is that? I would say that for the past 100 years, countries around the world, including Korea or Japan or South Latin American countries, they have striven to imitate and emulate American content. And America has worked or has functioned as a role model or standard in terms of media production. So we have to think that Korean wave was possible not only because Korean media industry people worked hard, but based on some kind of hybridity between hybridity of Korean traditional content and more modern American way of or techniques or know-how of content making was behind the success of the Korean popular cultures wave or spread around the world. And also K-pop is not only music, but as the members of the K-pop recently are considered as an ambassador for world peace. Yesterday, I had a talk to the students in Indonesia, and the moderator, who is a professor there, told me that a few weeks ago, there was a sad disaster in Indonesian stadium after the football game. But afterwards, K-pop fans in Indonesia, they raised more than $30,000 for to help the families of those Indonesian casualties. So we have many things to consider out of this new cultural phenomena called the Korean wave. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, apologies everybody, but thank you very much to both of our speakers for some fascinating talks. I believe we have about 15 minutes left for questions, and I see a lot of people in the audience who I know probably have a lot of questions. And so please, if you have a question, please raise your hand or type in the chat box, and I will pass the floor over to you.
I think Tong-hee has it.
Okay, we have one immediately from Tong-hee Lee in the chat. Tong-hee, are you able to talk? Would you like to speak your question yourself, or shall I read it for you?
Yeah, could you hear my screen? Could you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Im and Professor Lee's fascinating speech. I just have two questions considering for the presentation. I think these two questions is for both of you. The first question is, how do we consider or measure the popularity of Korean wave in Western society? And like the popularity of the exhibition in the A Museum, and especially even the expression about the Hallyu, it seems more popular than other expression in VA during the same period. So I think it's quite interesting phenomenon to think this question. And I think I also have a following question for this, is to what degree we consider the Korean wave as a kind of control flow. I mean, like the flow from, like a kind of culture flow from east to west. And for my second question is concerning about the soft power. This is about to what degree did the Korean wave as a soft power resources has already contributed to helping or encouraging the Western public to concerning Korean related issue. Like BTS and Blackpink, they also using some traditional Korean music in their performance, or they also wearing handbook during their performance. So I think that will a kind of, I mean, activities to help fans, help audience to understanding Korean cultures. And also some TV dramas, they involving some Korean related issue. So I just a bit interesting about these two questions. Thank you so much.
Professor Shim, would you like to respond to some of the questions and what?
Okay. I thought Professor Aomi is going to answer first.
Oh, okay. In this case, sure, I can touch upon both very briefly. And regarding the popularity of the exhibition, it's really hard to tell because this masculinity, the exhibition is going to end quite soon, as in November. So, and then another thing is the size of the exhibition is somewhat different. So, it's really, I can only say that we probably need to leave it until the end when the exhibition ends and how many visitors actually went. So it's really difficult to see how you measure popularity and or attention, because obviously there's quite a lot of media attention. You get media attention about this the V&A Hallyu exhibition because it's a first of this kind in many ways. So, and especially with a more recent kind of the explosion of let's say Hallyu's popularity. So maybe all these things kind of coincide with each other. So so I think it probably is difficult for me to say which is more kind of popular now and so on. So I think we have to leave it to a later time. And also in order to really gauge its impact, probably we also need to do some survey on the audience viewers as well, and why they went there and to looking for what. So I think it probably the audience or the viewers visitors, they have kind of certain kind of motivation why they want to see. So, and especially this exhibition costs about £20. And of course, there's a bit of a discount if you're 26, younger than 26, and so on and so forth. So, but it's not cheap. But at the same time, it's not very expensive either, which is what you normally pay when you go to a good exhibition. So I will leave it to that. And about the use of Korean costumes and all those things, I think a lot to do with the fact that the music video, the visual representation performances are so important part of the K-pop, which is also freely available, unlike Japanese popular music. So, and the how they kind of represent, how they let's say build a narrative visually and musically is very, very important. I think K-pop really makes a use of any possible kind of resources in hand. So the hanbok and the Korean, anything that kind of relates to the Koreanness visually is usually one of the very good technical kind of the resources. Not only just about the cultural thing, but this is one of those things. And but at the same time, you also find there many other kind of the non-Korean references. So maybe for non-Korean the audience, when you see something which appears to be very Asian Korean, it probably draws your attention. Because sometimes, quite often, some of the shape and those what appears to be Korean is a very kind of pan-Asianized in many ways. The very good example being the Idol, the music video, and the shape of the pagoda, and it looks. It doesn't look necessarily specifically the Korean, but it looks Asian. So in a way, it hybridize. So it become a less kind of I shouldn't say you shouldn't use the word authentic, but become a more kind of the digestible and the easier to recognize for the global audience. So I think this is how they see it. But there's no doubt this the Koreanness, especially through costumes and sometimes even music sampling like techita and those things, it's always very helpful. And then also gives a more kind of K, the prefix K to stand out in the K-pop and the Hallyu product.
Okay, thank you so much.
So did you ask also about control flow, as whether Korean wave is a control flow?
I mean, for the control flow, it's a kind of a counter argument for the cultural imperialism.
It is a good and very relevant question, because for the past 100 years, the whole of international cultural flow was dominated by America, and the scholars have talked that global cultural flow or international cultural flow can be characterized by one-way flow from America to the rest of the world, or from the West to the rest. So against this backdrop, from the late 1960s, and especially the Latin American scholars began to argue America is another cultural imperialist. And then in the 1970s, telenovela, which is a drama form from Latin America, began to be exported to the rest of the world. And when Brazilian telenovela was imported to Portugal, which used to be colonialist to the Brazil, the whole world began to say that finally control flow was realized. And then 1980s and 1990s, Hong Kong films and Japanese manga, they are considered as an example of the control flow, because especially right after the First World War, since around 1919 or 1920, Hallyu movies were already were dominating the whole theaters around the world. Even in Europe, Hallyu movies dominated more than 50% of audience share in the early 1920s and 1930s as well. So consider that. Control flow is very important, and in the 21st century, when Korean wave began to export its content to not only Asian countries but also Western countries, the scholars in America and Europe also began to see Korean wave is a very interesting and very meaningful case study for the control flow. And also with regards to soft power, although I suggested the new concept called sweet power, if we are trying to explain the ramifications out of Korean wave from the point of soft power, yes, Korean wave is enjoying some kind of soft power these days. I can see more and more foreign students are coming to Korean campuses as exchange student, and I find more and more foreigners are trying to learn Korean language, and based on better images, better image making based on Korean wave, Korean cars and electronic devices are being sold better in foreign countries. So I would not say that Korean wave was made in order to make soft power, but Korean wave has some kind of a unintended positive effect on the Korea's soft power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have a question from Tiun An.
Thank you very much for fascinating talks. And I'm Jiyeon, a PhD candidate at the University of Edinburgh. I have all 3 questions. Each 2 questions are for one of you, and 1 question would be common question for both of you. So for Professor the ESRC Hallyu project sounds really fascinating and amazing, but I want to know, and it seems like participants must have diverse disciplines and different perspective and different definition of Hallyu. So did you have any difficulties to get to the conclusion of your workshop? And if you have any kinds of common ground beyond sharing case studies, so I would like to listen to your experience. And for Professor Shim, I totally agree with you, all your points that actually the Korean cultural industry seems to perform successfully in the global market, especially recognized by global audience. And then we can see Hallyu as a success of Korean culture industry to be converged into the global, like American hegemonic global market. But still, I would like to ask why Korea in Korean wave does matter. And so if you find any distinguished feature from other examples like Japanese wave or Hong Kong wave in 1990s, so or can we see just this phenomenon of Korean wave like evolution of cultural globalization? And for both of you, it's really a big question, but I have lots of curiosity, so I want to listen to your opinion. So what is Korean in Korean wave? What can we define Korea? So it's like, can we say, we can of course say human resource and cultural resource, economic resource, we can say it, but how can we define Korean wave, and how can we find Korea in Korean wave? Thank you very much.
Before we get into the answers for those questions, I just want to raise one more question that popped up in the chat. I will read it just in the interest of time. And this is a question for Professor Lee. The question is, do you think with the growing popularity of, excuse me, the chat has disappeared. Do you think with the growing popularity of the Hallyu wave, the importance of Korean studies today has reached a new height? And with a new generation of scholars researching on Hallyu and its impact, do you think it has led to open a new field of relevance with Korean studies? So that is the question in the chat. We are running quite short of time, and we do have to save time for the presentation of the award to our student. And so I'm going to ask very cruelly if Dr. and Professor Shim could limit their responses to about a minute each, if that's possible. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My question, the question you ask about the diversity of interpretation of the Hallyu, I think is really fair enough. But I think the actually intention of having this kind of interdisciplinary the network is to understand why and how, in what to what extent a different kind of interpretation or understanding about Hallyu can exist. So because the Hallyu the process, that's one thing. Another thing is that within Hallyu, K-pop, drama, and all different kinds of specific genre takes a different position within that kind of, so to speak, umbrella term, Hallyu. Hallyu is a kind of very abstract concept. So because Hallyu doesn't really exist, this is a kind of a phenomena, and as a whole is a kind of the conglomerate of the creative industry and the production and so on and so forth. Hallyu has become almost kind of an ideology to some extent. So I think this is a kind of thing which I'm really interested in. So what it also leads to what K is a K in Hallyu, or K in the K-pop or anything. It's also depending on a position too. So what is K for Korean maybe not be the same as what is perceived by non-Korean and so on and so forth, or depending on which Korean you're talking about and so on and so forth. It's a very, very relevant, and but there's a lot of subjectivity involved in this thing. And another thing, like anything, Koreanness also has been changing over time. So what was the Korean, let's say early 20th century or 19th century, may not be the case as you find it. So I think perhaps this also brings to that kind of our understanding how anthropological or let's say ethnographical understanding of the K would be quite useful in this context. So I think I probably did use up my 1 minute, I think. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I hope this the response can answer some of your the questions.
Yeah, I will try to be quick. Why Korean wave matter? I think it is fascinating for foreign audiences and foreign people enjoy foreign culture. It is a transnational border thing, and it is only possible by the development of the communication technology. And personally, as a fan of foreign cultures, I have learned from foreign cultures, and through enjoying foreign cultures, and I have expanded my horizons. And I think it can be applied to the other people, other fans around the world when they enjoy Korean wave. And what is Korea? It is a very big question, and I would say that Korea is a package of nation and people, geography, culture, history, and law. So for quite a long time, for the past several hundred years, Korea was small, but although geographically Korea is small, Korea can be big. So by being big, we can the Koreans can talk more freely and more equally with other foreign nationals and other cultures and nations. And I think it will be good for the future world peace. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you very much. Oh.
Sorry, can I say just one thing? I think I've got to answer the question about the influence of the Hallyu on the development of Korean studies and the language program and so on and so forth. I mean, it's a huge impact. It has a very positive impact on the way the Korean studies has been perceived, and then also the developing and in different the disciplines and so on and so forth. When it comes to university, also depending on how each university, UK higher institution see it as a kind of a future development, because this is a kind of a demand and supply chain. So if the particular university would think that this is the Korean studies is going to be good for the future development, and then they might. And then if they don't, they won't. We have seen quite many different kinds of the rise and falls of Asian studies program or different kind of program department in many UK universities. Many years ago, all the Chinese departments were closing down. And then now they have to reopen it and so forth. It's all a lot to do with what UK, the higher education sees as a kind of a future, something which they would like to develop in the future. So I think this is also more specific to UK higher education context, I think. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for keeping those remarks so brief. But we all learned a lot from your talks today. So I'd like to thank both of our distinguished speakers for their contributions. I would now like to pass over to my colleague, Young-Mi Kim, who is going to share some closing remarks and also make the award for our Doobo Distinguished Scholar. Thank you, Young-Mi.
Thank you, Holly. We try to be short and finish and on time. Every year, we give out YP 윤보선 Young Scholar Award among the best dissertations on Korean topic. And this year, Sarah Hutton is receiving the YPS Young Scholars Award. She wrote her dissertation on how our Orientalist ideas perpetuated in Western news reports of BTS. Sarah, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kim. And I'd like to thank the symposium for selecting me for the Young Scholar Awards and to Dr. Young-Mi Kim for her support and supervision throughout the dissertation process. So I joined the MSc East Asian Relations program at the University of Edinburgh due to my interest in both East Asian politics and South Korean popular culture. And my research throughout my degree centered around different aspects of Hallyu. And for my dissertation, I really wanted to focus on how Hallyu has been accepted by Western audiences. So to do so, I examined how ideas are perpetuated, Orientalist ideas are perpetuated in Western news reports using BTS as a case study. And I found that the K-pop industry is portrayed as both culturally and morally inferior than the Western counterpart. And this is due to the reproduction of Orientalist tropes and negative stereotypes about Korea and Korean people. So this does raise questions about how other K-pop groups will be treated following the success of BTS. And I argued that for other artists to be widely accepted by the West, they may have to sort of move away from elements that the West doesn't like about the K-pop industry, such as the mistreatment of idols, the trainee system, and then also bring in aspects such as English language in their music and in promotion. And this is something that I think we'll see develop over the next few years as BTS has suspended their group activities for military enlistment. So yeah, it's ongoing. And yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. I forgot to mention there's also fund of £250.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think I'm going to, address everybody's name here. My special thanks for all participants and speakers and opening and congratulatory remarking speeches. And Korean Studies is actually doing quite well. We started from 2019 postgraduate program, and this is our 4th year of running this. And we started with AKS seed institutional grant, and now we move on to core grant, offering jobs for postdoctoral research fellow and also regular scholarship. This year we offer 2 full tuition fee scholarship for PhD and MSc British tuition, and also 4 partial scholarship for all students. And also we offer workshop grant, and we do various things. And this is one of our events. Thank you all for coming. I think we should end. Thank you.